everyone. Welcome back to True Patriot Love. I'm Shaliza Backus, and yes, I'm a new face here. So thank you so much for joining in, and make sure to follow us on social media. You can find us online at TPL Media. And if you don't know anything about me, let me introduce myself a little bit. So I am kind of a pop culture freak. I like to talk about Hollywood. I like to talk about famous athletes. Now, ask me what my sports knowledge is, and I probably couldn't tell you. The three football players I could probably name are Tom Brady and the Kelsey brothers. And speaking of Tom Brady, he recently, well, not that recently, I guess, he is now single. He ended his marriage with Giselle Bundchen. He's been linked to Kim Kardashian, most recently Alex Earl, but it doesn't seem like anything really sticks. So, to talk about why Tom Brady can't get a date, we are bringing in Sim Chhabra. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I'm really excited for this. So,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm sure the TPL audience is quite familiar with you, but go ahead.
So I have a clinic right down the street. It's called Horizon Within. I do psychotherapy work, and it's good to be on the show.
Well, it's lovely to have you. So, what do you focus on? And I think maybe a better question would be you focus a lot on men's mental health. And do you think that that ties into dating life?
It does. So I focus on anxiety management. I focus on depression management, ADHD management, and mental well-being. And one of the things that I focus on greatly with a lot of men is identity and sense of purpose. So dating does play. Yeah.
That's interesting then. So we've got somebody like Tom Brady who he's got 7 rings, I think. I think that's right. I just know that because that's an Ariana Grande reference.
Yeah.
But he is wildly successful, and now he's retired. His marriage, his long-term marriage ended. How do you think that affects mental health, and how do you move forward after that?
That's a very good question, but I will add that he has 8 rings because Giselle gave her back.
I like that one.
Right, did you watch the Netflix?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
She was so good. Oh
So
my
good.
God, man. She was on a tear.
I think she got out at the right time. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah. So coming back to the serious side of things, it absolutely does, because the biggest challenge that I notice when you go through such a steep life transition is that, you kind of build this achievement step ladder, right? Like, and it's broad, but finish school, get a career, get settled, have kids, right? Getting a divorce, regardless of whether you're Tom Brady or an average Joe, it's a big setback for the individual, and it applies to both sides of the relationship. But because I primarily focus on men, they attach a different identity to it, and I find that for them, it's a deconstruction of their core identity, because they feel like that's the sequential growth they have to kind of achieve. So yeah, I do notice that quite a bit.
So then, okay, let's talk about his life after his divorce then. He's been linked to Kim Kardashian, never really confirmed that they were dating. And most recently, Alex Earl, who is a social media influencer, but also quite young.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a correlation between that?
It's hard to say, because you could look at Bill Belichick, right? With the 25-year-old that he's with. Men are odd that way, and it's kind of unfair to categorize them, because I think these media personalities or celebrities are a bit of an anomaly when it comes to rebound partners. So you can't really typecast it, but would it play an influence in terms of the way he's going about and expressing his way of rebounding? Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And again, tell me about like rebounding actually just like, rings some bells in my head. Like, I feel like everybody kind of experiences that differently. It could go one way. Either you jump back into something right away with someone, or you're on your own and you're depressed in a corner for a year. How does that tie in with your mental health? And how do different people experience that after the end of a significant relationship?
I like how you brought up 2 good points. You brought up how quickly people get back into the game versus, how people process the disappointment. It can go either way. There is no one true answer, I believe, because our society teaches us, hey, get back on your feet. Get back into it. They're gone. It's figured out. But it becomes very unique to that person and what relationship or being in a relationship meant to them. So it's not necessarily about the person that left them. It's the meaning that they attach to being with that one person. I think culture plays a big role in that, because if you look at it from like a Western individualistic lens, right? Like it's very sequential. It's like I marry a person, and then it's me and that person. We build a life. If you look at it from the flip side, and you look at it from a collectivist culture, you're marrying into a family system. So to answer that same question now, when you look at it through two different lenses, the rebound would come through an individualistic lens because they're just looking at themselves. They're looking at, okay, what do I need to do to solve my problem? And how do I get back onto my feet? Because it's a self-correcting aspect. So Tom Brady is a perfect example of that, because it's kind of like, okay, she's moved on. She's done her thing. I've gone through my dating phase, whether it's Kim Kardashian or whoever the most recent one is. And I need to move on with my life. The second part, the question that you really asked that I liked is, well, what about the ones that take a bit longer? And those are more where they have like family systems. So it could be where they attached a different meaning to being in a relationship. They attached a different meaning because for them, it became more of a nucleus of two personalities that merge. And now they have to uncouple themselves from that identity.
That's actually a really interesting point. I think I don't think a lot of people realize that sometimes when you're in a relationship for such a long time, it truly does become part of your identity. And sometimes you don't really know who you are outside of that relationship. And do you find that that happens with a lot of people that you talk to or have talked to?
Uh, I find that, like, especially when I'm working with middle-aged men, I've noticed that a bit, especially when they have put a significant number of years into that relationship, where they don't have a true identity of themselves. Um, uh, and it could be said fairly for both sides. So, but having worked with a lot of men, especially middle-aged, that are going through that transition, it becomes a bit harder for them because men are brought up with markers, right? Like it's achieve A, then achieve B, then achieve C, then achieve D, right? And that's your sense of identity. So any uh, rupture then interrupts the identity, and that's why I kind of work with identity a lot, because I feel like once they kind of like go, okay, it doesn't matter what I'm experiencing at this moment, I'm still an individual. And then depending on cultural upbringing, if they're coming from an individualistic upbringing, it's very easy for them to recognize that boundary and go, okay, that's a life experience. I'm still myself. How do I get back to myself? Collective cultures, it becomes a lot more difficult because that was their identity. I was a husband, or I was and now it's introducing that, especially in middle age and up, it's a lot more difficult. It's not impossible. It requires a little bit of extra work because now you're introducing individual that was a husband.
Yes. And I think even as an ex-husband, especially when there are kids involved, when there's a family that you've built with this person, your ex will always be a part of your life
Right.
because you've got your kids, you've still got your family, you want to keep them as close as you possibly can. And so when somebody else is coming into that equation, when someone like Tom Brady would start dating again, there's a lot that comes with that. So, do you think that people are actually equipped to handle that? They see somebody who's like sparkly and famous like Tom Brady, but then you have to realize his ex will probably still always be a part of his life in some way. He's got kids, he's got a lot that he's dealt with before, and he's not playing the sport that he's famous for playing anymore. So, do you think that that might scare some people away once they actually get into it?
What do you mean by like the which people? Like,
The people he would date.
okay, I see what you're saying. Would his future partner have difficulties transitioning into this dual split relationship? It's like Tiger Woods is a good example of
Mhm.
that, because if you look at, when his separation happened and you're looking at how, like, he's dating Laura Trump now, which is a Doesn't matter. It's not about the politics, but it's just the fact that she's also coming from a divorce setting because um, Trump Jr.
Hmm.
is the point I'm trying to make. I'm not categorizing the individuals. What I'm saying is a lot of times you're going to get the Brady Bunch blends. So I don't think so. It's a partner issue. I think what it is, it's a communication issue where you're respecting the nucleuses and you're affording that the other parent still has access to that child because it's a creation of them, and to be supportive because you have to kind of understand depending on the age of the children because his kids are young.
Hmm.
You want to keep it as civil as possible so they can then recognize their rupture that they're experiencing in their family nucleus through their eyes. And now, as parents, even though you're separated, you are affording them as much of consistency as possible.
So then, what about then when you think you've established a relationship with a new person? What is it like introducing them to your kids?
Too early is not the best because there I would say you have to look at the age range of the children, and you also have to look at the style of communication you have with that child. So you could be either parent. If they've witnessed multiple partners and they are in their formidable years, so anybody that's 12 and under, for them, sense of safety is very different because they quite haven't developed a part of where the world is not as overwhelming and intimidating. So for them, if they see multiple partners, and I'm generalizing here, I'm not saying it's predictably common, but it has a deeper impact. They may not express it, they may not present it, but you'll see attachment dissociative disorders down the road when they kind of go, okay, maybe I can't, I don't know how. Um, but if they're in their teen years, by the time we're teens, we're tending to kind of come into our own world because our prefrontal cortex is coming into being. So we're processing the world in a very different way. So we have an ability to kind of discern where you'd be like, okay, I don't agree with it, I don't understand it, but I know how to block it. Young adult and up, now you've kind of formed your own opinions in life. You may not uh, vocally express it, but you've carved enough of your own personal life where it doesn't impact you the same way because you may have moved out, or you have a partner of your own, or you're in uni. There's something significant happening in your life where a parent's partner choice doesn't make that much of an impact. It will have an influence, which is very different because it's still a parent, but impact won't be as significant.
That's interesting. And then I'm thinking now, okay, say you've established a relationship with a new partner, but your child is really struggling with it. Your child doesn't like your new partner. Your
Yeah,
child doesn't get along with your new partner. How then do you navigate that situation?
that's communication. That's genuine communication. Uh, Age always plays a significant role. Plus, also how their relationship is with the other parent. So what I'm trying to get at here is, so say for example, take Tiger Woods,
Hmm.
okay, and I think it was like within a year and a half he started dating, but the kids were young,
Hmm.
and so for them it would be more like, okay, is he respectful of my mom? Is I'm going to be safe? Because kids come from that lens. They're looking for how interrupted is my life and how can I put it together. They're processing their world through that rupture. So it's not about whether you need to have a conversation and say you need to like this person because I like them or whatever. Either parent has to recognize that the viewpoint of that child is the way I see the world is interrupted, and I am trying to understand whether it's a friend or a foe. So if either one where the partners change, their coping response now is going to be, I don't understand it, so I'm going to go avoidant. But now it's becoming permanent marriage or move in or whatever. So the pushback is not necessarily I don't like the individual. The pushback is more my world's changing all over again. I have a ruptured experience that has not been addressed. I don't know how to express it because I'm under 10. My brain doesn't know how to process it. And the only way I can express it out is by saying I have a dislike. So that's what needs to be looked at first. And it's something that is not trivial to explore. You just have to look at it through the child's lens and you can understand, okay, it's an interruption. What do I need to do to address that? Have the conversation at that level. This is something that you need support and guidance. So you need somebody that's coming from that professional lens. So like a mental health support or a psychologist or a family therapist, because you're going to be looking at something that's a little bit more complex. But that what that does is, one, it gives the child the opportunity to understand, hey, this is what I feel, but it also gives them an opportunity to recognize that the other individual is not necessarily a foe, which helps them.
That's interesting. So then what happens if all of that you're trying to say, what if it doesn't work? What if there's still some sort of dislike, some sort of disconnect between your child and a new partner? And what if your back really is up against the wall and you have to choose?
Those are extremes, because you're not, I mean, for you to hit that that stress point, there's got to be some other significant complexities to it, because it's not going to be a linear, I don't like it, I'm going to put my foot down. Again, it becomes individual. You're going to have to address it where something needs to be understood. Maybe, it requires family counseling. It requires a transition structure. It requires a little bit more of a support. So I'll kind of give you a extreme example that would kind of match that. So like say Brady was still playing. Okay, so let's put him back in the game. 18 weeks. He has to be, of which 9 weeks he's on the road, 9 weeks he's playing at home. But each week for those 18 weeks plus preseason, and let's assume he's going to go postseason, right? You start doing the math now. You're looking at from August till February. There's an absent parent. That child, no matter what age they are, they're going to have an issue because they're completely with this new person. Their reaction is you're going to hit that wall very, very quickly, because there's a environmental variable that leaves the child exposed. They could be the best. They could have been a better partner than their mom, but we're not measuring that. We're looking at where the stress point is. But now he's retired. Now he's a sportscaster, but that's off choice. So it changes the script a bit. So now the pushback may not necessarily be the same. So you have to also look at which outstanding variable is causing that pushback, to then address it and go, okay, what do we do to solve it?
I mean, life's hard. There's just a lot there's a lot to go through. So let's come back to kind of the lighter point. Why can't Tom Brady get a date? Why? Why do you think he can't?
Because of his diet.
Which is what? I don't even...
It's like a vegan diet.
Listen, a lot of people are vegan now.
Yeah. I'm not saying
that's a cool thing to do.
Listen, from a therapist lens, you asked me a question. I'm just, being comical about it. It's a good question. Like, I feel he hasn't quite resolved his wound.
How so?
Setbacks, regardless of how you express it into the world, they are deep and personal. And it requires a journey. That doesn't mean you have to sit there and wallow in it, but it's something where you have to kind of go, okay, like, why did I hit that wall? That doesn't mean it's something flawed about yourself. It's, and that's something that I kind of like always work when I'm working with clients. I go, it's not about what you did wrong, because we kind of like, okay, maybe I messed up somewhere. It's not where you messed up. It's how you structured the way you thought that would be, right? A very good example, and it's very common in South Asian cultures, oh, you want to do something after marriage, right? Like it's the classic single line. You want to stay out till 12 after marriage, right? Right. So now imagine, this is where like cultures play a big role.
Mhm.
So from a collective lens, let's assume like, Tom Brady is like Virat Kohli, right? The cricketer. For him, he created this reality that after marriage, I would have all these things to do. And now he's divorced. Well, he has to process that disappointment because now he has to reconcile that. Am I doing this after my divorce? You see what I'm saying? Now, what do I do? Because technically I'm still single. So am I back to square one or da da da? Tom Brady's lens, same disappointment, but you still need to process that hurt because for him, it was not after I was going to get married. It was once I was married. Same, there's a component of a addition to their life, but it's once and after. They both have to process it. So I'm not making an opinion that this is the reason why he's not getting a date. What I'm saying is that I don't feel it's truly processed. 'Cause men aren't taught to process that deep. End of story. Sorry. We just aren't taught to process that deeply.
And okay, so this brings in a whole different conversation about men's mental health. And we were talking about this off the air that, you know, men's mental health is something that really and truly does need to be explored. When we talking about our feelings, talking about how things make us feel, somehow that's so much easier for women than it is for men. And I don't think a lot of men realize how it affects their lives and how it affects their relationships.
We realize it. We just don't know how to connect the dots. It's very different. So the awareness is always there. It's just we learn early in our path of growth that boys don't cry or boys don't express emotions that openly. It's changing now. But that doesn't mean like, we got to take it in and hold it strong. It's just, it's a learned part of it. We don't spend time in it. The missed opportunity is not in societal learning. The missed opportunity is understanding that, when we are going through puberty, if we are made to become a little bit more cognizant of that emotional change, we will be emotionally connected when we're young adults. That's where it gets missed. Because when women are going through puberty, you're taught to pay attention to your body. You're taught to pay attention to the cycles of your body. We also experience it, but we're not taught how to pay attention to it. So then it becomes, oh, boys will be boys, right? But we're going through hormonal changes. That's where it gets missed. So you introduce that in present time and you go back and go, you know what, in sex ed, we're going to introduce just how to show them how to become aware that yes, men also go through a puberty cycle because you produce sperm at a certain cycle. So your body's going to go through it. None of us are aware of it. So we may feel aggression, but we may not understand it. Mm. Once you start connecting that dot, it becomes individual. Then just like yourselves, we then become aware and go, I know my cycle. Which means I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive, which means I need better tools to express. It changes the game. That's where the answer is, or a answer.
Well, yeah, a answer for sure. But I just think, so then what about the men who are in adulthood who still don't know how to deal with those things and how to, and maybe this is like, maybe this is me falling down the rabbit hole on social media, just seeing all of these like relationship videos come up on my timeline and people talking about attachment styles and how so many men are avoidant.
Yeah.
Is that something that's taught? Is that environmental?
It's all of the above. I don't like peas on my plate. Like, I'm not ridiculing or minimizing what you're saying. I agree with you. What I'm trying to say is I work with men, and it's something you can learn. There's always an opportunity to learn. We all can go, okay, this is what it is, and go, what else would I need? And as long as you have that frame of mind, my dislike when I go through my feeds is you're putting words where you have no understanding of what that means. Because now you're labeling. We all have an avoidance to discomfort. We all have it. Why am I forcing a title to a truth that I don't have a true understanding for? I don't know how to process an emotion, or I may not know how to express it properly. And it's both. Like, hey, I remember grade 9 Valentine rejections, right? 4 years later, when I asked somebody out for prom, where am I going? I'm going to the memory of rejection, right? But that was grade 9. That was a 13-year-old me, not a 17-year-old me, right? But the point I'm trying to make is we go to where we felt the most hurt. And if your environment doesn't encourage healing, men having issues, right? Now you come into your mid 40s, Tom Brady, there's your answer. So it's not he's avoidant, it's he's not processed an emotion. Why? Because guess what? We weren't taught that. So if you don't have a way to connect, that's what differentiates men processing emotion versus women processing emotion. Because from a very early age, women are taught to get tuned with their emotions. Men are taught not to get in tune with their emotions. It's just a missed opportunity, which means that you have to learn it a lot later, which means it requires a little extra effort to trigger that thought process. That's all.
So then how do you feel about the generalization then that women are more emotional than men? Do you think that's true?
Women are equally emotional as men are. Women are more aware on how to work with it. Society, I think in the last 50 years, this label slapping is where the issue became, because if you don't understand something, you just put a label on it. Label sounds good. Everybody runs to the label. The issue is there. Both feel emotions. One knows how to label it. One knows how to identify it. And one knows how to process it. The other doesn't. That's the difference. And because it's a taught behavior from very early, and you go back even 200 years, 300 years, women taught women the cycle. There's no cycle. So how am I going to teach my child something that didn't get? Now I learn, they get, they learn, they give. 3 generations later, we are 10% of what you guys are today.
Yeah.
That's the difference. It's not more or less. It's just you need to introduce it sometime. But because we run to names and labels, no one's going to come into the arena. Why would I want to step into an arena and get labels? Then I'm better off staying in the corner because that's comfort.
Yeah. And I think that's the mindset for a lot of men too. When the idea of therapy or, unlearning certain behaviors comes about, I think that, again, it's the kind of boys will be boys mentality.
Right. And you brought up a very good one. And I like that. You said unlearning, right? So when I'm working with clients, you sit and unlearn, it's a labyrinth. You're going to go and go, okay, where do I change it? The way I help them frame it, I go, think of it as a software update. Every 6 months, 8 months, your iOS is going to update. What are they looking for? What is an update? An update is you're looking at where the gaps are and you're filling them in. So instead of us going and unlearning, why don't we update some of those files? Regardless of what the source was, we can address those trauma points. They become a position of, okay, this needs addressing. But you still need to update because you got to function in today's life. So a very good example would be, and CBT is kind of neat in that because the way cognitive behavior therapy works is that it brings awareness to your thoughts. Right? Fundamentally, it's designed to go, okay, this is my thought. This thought then yields a certain emotion, which yields a certain behavior. right? Because it always cascades. So, coming back to why Tom Brady can't get a date, if Tom Brady's sitting next to me, right, I would be like, okay, you have a core belief, but you also have a core wound. So let's separate the two because we cannot address both simultaneously. So let's put the wound aside for a second and let's look at your belief. Which part of that belief needs an update for you to then say, okay, I am going to be more in tune with my emotion and I'm going to process my emotions. So instead of me trying to rebound or go my old way of doing, where you're like, I'm just going to go find somebody else, right? Now you're doing a corrective behavior because you're bringing in a new thought, you're updating the thought. The wound is still there, but what you've done is you've stabilized this. Now that we've stabilized the thought, we can then go and address the wound, which is you had overall view, it got disrupted, and you have to rebuild it. So now you're bringing problems. So that's how would be the most logical way of structuring it. And that's what I usually do in sessions is work with them in that lens. Because if you're trying to unlearn, now you're competing with childhood parenting. And that's a tough one to crack because that's core identity.
I really like that. I really like that it's rather updating your knowledge rather than unlearning something.
Because you always have an opportunity to learn. And that's reframing. So, you kind of go, yes, I do have to address that. So it doesn't mean that we're saying that doesn't exist or you're casting aside. What you're doing is now you're seeing the two as two unique pathways and you're saying, okay, I still need to function in today's world. I still need to be able to go out there, regulate, move on, find happiness because we're all deserving of that. But instead of saying, I need to unlearn a behavior, I need to update a file. So now it could be where you're dating and you could be like, you know what? I'm going to be a little bit more upfront, or I'm going to be a little bit more expressive, or I'm going to be more true to myself. And because I'm aware of my emotional cycle, maybe I won't schedule dates when I'm going through that cycle. I may not have full attunement, but I have an awareness, right? So what does it do now? That I'm not going on Tinder for those 7-10 days, just like how you guys have your cycle, right? And become a little bit more aware that, okay, you know what? I will go when I'm a little bit more baseline because now I'm going to attract not only a partner that's more at the same parallel as myself, but I'm also able to understand that I'm looking for a partnership versus a replacement. Do it when your hormone cycles are high. You're making a clouded judgment. How different am I as a gender? But I'm quick to label you. You're having your time of the month. So am I. But society doesn't educate us and it doesn't afford us to have that. So we make it through mockery, which is not a fair thing to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And if you had just like someone who is Tom Brady's age, just got out of a relationship, kind of career definitely changing, his first session with you, what is, and you probably already answered this already, but just breaking it down, what's the first thing you would discuss?
How they see the world. I want to, I like seeing how they see the world. I don't need to understand it. I need to see it how they see it and what is important in it. That's why the clinic's name's Horizon Within, because I want to look at their horizon line, right? Because once I know, okay, what it is that they're looking at, then I can have an understanding of why it's important to them. And then go, okay, what would that solution look like? Because at the end of the day, it's what we have in our own inner horizon is what we're seeking and striving to change. So as your therapist, that's my job. My job is to stand beside you and instead of critique you or say, no, that's not the right look point, okay, how far are you? What do you need? And how do we get you there?
Good to know. Good to know. And if you had any advice for anyone really going through it at the end of a relationship or trying to even make it work, even it hasn't ended yet, what advice would you give them?
Get supportive care. It's very important. And don't be afraid to shop. Like, if you go to somebody a few sessions, it doesn't work. It's okay. Find somebody. But you need supportive care. That's one thing I would say. Another thing I would say is just have self love for yourself. And what I mean by that is instead of critiquing the errors, just kind of go, it is what it is. It's not fair. It's hurtful. Recognize the emotions, acknowledge the emotions, and then kind of go, okay, what is it that I would like? Do I like to remedy it? Would I like to walk away from it? Because you have to understand which one you're fighting for. It gets complex because now cultural upbringing makes a big difference. Worldviews make a big difference. Societal pressures make a difference. Gender placement makes a big difference. So the layers become a little bit more complex in that lens because, from a male lens, I could be like, well, da da da, but maybe the kids are young and, you are the earner, she's not, or da. So there is I can't give you one universal answer to it, but these two are constants regardless. One, seek help, seek supportive help because you can't do this alone. And two, acknowledge that it's not something that you're in error with. And once you're able to do that, then you can structure it. Then you can look at your realities and go, okay, is it me? Is it them? The kids? Da, da, da. And now you can stack that. And that's why you need supportive care because you need somebody that's going to have an observer's lens, that's going to be able to help you organize your thoughts and then go, okay, which is the best? Because if there are kids involved, you got to make sure that family nucleus is the least disruptive because that's what you're fighting for. House, money, all of that. That's individual. That's a fair fight.
Mm-hmm.
But then that's why supportive care will then say, okay, what do we need to make sure that they're safe? What do we need to make sure you're safe? What do you need to make sure? Da, da, da. And now you can stack build.
Great advice, Sim. That was a lot to unpack. It is. And thank you so much for joining us. Once again, you can check out TPL Media online and all social media platforms and remind us once again where we can find you and if we want to contact you.
So the clinic's name is horizonwithin.ca. The office is right down in Port Credit. I take clients online, in person, or over the phone. I work with men's mental well-being, anxiety, depression, and ADHD management. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.